Welcome to Forbidden BL Stories, where original stories come alive. Let the story begin. Part 1. The Ghost's Gambit. The antiseptic scent of cheap cleaner is the first thing I notice. It's a sharp, chemical ghost that tries and fails to mask the deeper smells of this place. The damp rot in the window frames, the stale cigarette smoke embedded in the walls, the faint, sour odor of old fear. My fear. It's the perfume of my life for the past 2 years, the signature scent of every temporary sanctuary I've ever managed to find. Outside, the city of Portland exhales a damp, gray sigh, the endless autumn drizzle streaking grime down the single, rattling window pane. 43 hours. Not of labor, though that memory is a phantom limb that still aches on cold nights. This is a different kind of exhaustion, a gnawing, sleepless anxiety that has hollowed me out completely. All that's left is a brittle shell of a man, wrapped around the fierce, incandescent core of my love for the small boy sleeping in a nest of worn blankets on the mattress. Alec, my son, my secret, my crime. His dark hair, so fine it's like spun silk, is plastered to his forehead with a light sheen of sweat. He has a slight fever, just enough to paint a feverish flush on his cheeks and make his dreams restless. He whimpers in his sleep, his small hand twitching, and I'm there in an instant, my palm cool against his brow. I trace a finger along his perfect cheekbone, a constant looping marvel at the impossible softness of his skin. He has my lips, the same slight pout that Ivan always said was a Kalashnikov trait. But his eyes, when they are open, are not mine. They are chips of obsidian, startlingly dark and impossibly intense in his small face. They are his father's eyes. The thought sent a chill through me, and my hand instinctively went to my chest, covering the small, hard lump beneath my shirt. My mother's locket. The clasp had fused with rust and age years ago, making it impossible to remove without breaking the chain. It was a constant, foolish risk, a single link to a past I was supposed to have erased. But it was the only piece of her I had left. The thought is not just a shard of ice anymore. It's a glacier in my gut, freezing me from the inside out. Nikolai Vitali. I haven't spoken the name aloud since the day I ran, but it is a brand on the inside of my skull, a syllable of dread that echoes in the quiet moments. He isn't a man to me. He is a monster from a bedtime story, a myth whispered in the underworld, the alpha who built an empire on the bones of his enemies, on the bones of my family. It's okay, Malish, I whisper, my voice a raw, broken thing in the quiet room. Papa's here. The word Papa tastes like ash on my tongue. It's a stolen title. I am not his father in any way the world would recognize. I am his carrier, his vessel. And if the plan, the cold and righteous plan forged in grief, had gone right, I would have been his weapon. I was raised to be a ghost. A boy named Sam, living in the shadows of a world that didn't know he existed, raised by the only other survivor of our personal apocalypse. A man named Ivan. Ivan was more ghost than man himself, the last loyal soldier of the Kalashnikov family. His heart a frozen monument to the day our world ended. The Vitales, led by Nikolai's father, had been brutally thorough. They'd swept through our ancestral home like a plague, leaving no one, except they had missed one. A scrawny, terrified, 7-year-old Omega boy, shoved into a cold storage locker by his mother seconds before the gunfire began. Ivan had found me hours later, shivering and silent, and spirited me away into a life of whispers and shadows. He raised me on a diet of hatred and grief. Our life was a pilgrimage of anonymity, a series of cheap motels and rented rooms where the Bible was the list of names of our dead. He was my guardian, my teacher, my drill sergeant. He taught me how to fight, how to stitch a wound, how to disappear into a crowd, how to lie with a pulse as steady as a sleeping man's. He molded my childhood sorrow into a singular, burning purpose. "Look at me, Sam," he'd command, grabbing my chin in his calloused hand. We'd be in some dingy, wood-paneled room, the air smelling of pine cleaner and mildew. I'd be 14, my body aching from a sparring session that had left me bruised and breathless. They took everything from us. Your mother, your father, your sisters. They left us with nothing but ghosts. We will make them pay. We will not rest until we take the one thing that matters to them. Their legacy. The opportunity arrived like a prayer answered by the devil. It began as a rumor, a whisper in the dark corners of the underworld that Ivan still navigated. Nikolai Vitali, the new head of the Bratva, the monster's son, was sterile. A genetic fluke, an irony so perfect it had to be fate. His legacy, the bloodline he'd inherited through murder, would die with him. Ivan's eyes, usually dull with old sorrow, had lit with a chilling, predatory fire. "He is untouchable," Ivan had said, pacing our small room, the floorboards groaning under his weight. "His fortress is impenetrable, his power absolute. But a man with no heir is a king with no future. He will be desperate. He will seek a surrogate. It is the only way." He'd stopped then, turning to fix me with a gaze so intense it felt like a physical blow. "And you, my boy, you will be that surrogate." I remember the revulsion that had coiled in my stomach, hot and acidic. To carry the child of my family's murderer? It was a violation beyond comprehension. But Ivan was a master of turning poison into purpose. "Think, Sam," he'd urged, his voice a low, persuasive growl. "It is the perfect revenge. You will carry his heir, the sole vulnerability of an invincible man. Then you will disappear, taking the child with you. His legacy, his hope. You will raise the boy not as a Vitali, not as a prince of a criminal empire, but as a Kalashnikov. You will teach him the truth of his stolen heritage, fill his heart with our family's righteous fury. One day, he will be our ghost, a Trojan horse to walk right through their gates and dismantle the Vitali Empire from within. His own blood turned against him. It is poetry. It is justice." He was right. The sheer, beautiful cruelty of it was undeniable. It was a plan worthy of the ghosts we served. The lawyer's office in Chicago was on the 50th floor of a glass tower that scraped the sky. The air smelled of expensive leather, lemon polish, and a deep, institutional deceit. I was 22, my face a carefully constructed mask of timid, desperate compliance. My heartbeat was a slow, steady drumbeat of purpose. The contract was a thick document of cold, clinical terms, each clause another brick in the wall of my deception. The carrier will relinquish all parental rights upon birth. The carrier will undergo all necessary medical procedures. The carrier will not attempt to learn the identity of the benefactor. I signed my name, the false one, Michael Stone, and felt nothing but the icy thrill of the first move in a long and patient game. The medical procedures that followed were a series of calculated violations. Each hormonal injection was a small victory, each invasive examination an infiltration into the enemy's most desperate hope. I lived in a clean, sterile apartment paid for by a shadow, my life dictated by a calendar of appointments. I never met him, of course. It was all handled through intermediaries, men with blank faces and expensive suits who spoke in clipped, impersonal tones. I didn't need to meet him. I had the picture Ivan had given me, a grainy photo of Nikolai Vitali stepping out of a black car. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his face carved from unforgiving granite. He was the monster from my nightmares, and I was going to be the author of his. I studied that photo until the planes of his face were as familiar to me as my own. I read every article, every whisper on the dark web about him. I built a portrait of a soulless brute, a man incapable of love or mercy. It was easy. It was necessary. The pregnancy was the first catastrophic complication. It was the variable Ivan's cold equation had never accounted for, my own treacherous heart. I had expected to feel like a vessel, a container for the mission. I had not expected the fierce, protective surge I felt during the first ultrasound, when the doctor pointed to a tiny, flickering pulse on the screen. "There's the heartbeat," she'd said, her voice cheerful, strong and steady. I'd felt a crack form in the ice around my soul. A heartbeat, not a weapon, a life. Then came the first kick. I was alone in the sterile apartment, staring out at the Chicago skyline, feeling a profound and terrifying loneliness. A flutter, low in my belly. I froze, my hand flying to the spot. felt like a trapped bird. My first thought was Ivan's voice. The weapon is moving. But then it came again. Stronger this time, a definite little nudge against my palm. A wave of emotion so powerful, so alien, washed over me that my knees buckled. I slid down the wall to the floor, my hand pressed to the swell of my belly, tears streaming down my face. It was the beginning of my secret betrayal. I started talking to him, my voice a soft murmur in the quiet apartment. I'd tell him about the sky, about the taste of strawberries, about the memory of my mother's lullaby. I was creating a world for him, a world that had nothing to do with revenge or blood feuds. I bought a small, stuffed bear, a ridiculously soft thing with button eyes, and hid it at the back of my closet. It was my secret shame, this budding love, a weakness I would have died before admitting to Ivan. He still called weakly, his voice a sharp, gravelly reminder of my duty. "How is the asset?" he'd ask, and I would lie, my voice perfectly steady. Growing strong. The birth was an agony that burned me clean. For 27 hours, pain was the only reality. It ripped through me, tearing away the layers of deception and duty, leaving only the raw, animal core of me. And when it was over, they laid him on my chest, a screaming, wrinkled, perfect little creature, and the world simply ended. The old world of ghosts and vengeance shattered into a million pieces. There was no plan, no revenge, no Vitali or Kalashnikov. There was only him, my son. His tiny hand curled around my finger, and the love that flooded me was a physical force, a tidal wave that obliterated every wall I had ever built. In that sterile, white room, I looked into his eyes, his father's eyes, and I knew two things with absolute soul-altering certainty. First, I could never, ever see this child as a weapon. And second, I still had to run. I had to protect him, not just from the monstrous world of the Vitalis, but from the cold, consuming purpose of Ivan and the ghosts he served. I was supposed to steal a legacy. Instead, I stole a life. Our life. The escape was a blur of adrenaline and terror. Ivan had arranged the first step, a silent driver to pick me up from a service entrance of the hospital. It was part of the original plan for my disappearance. But as the car sped away into the Chicago night, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the burner phone Ivan had given me. My thumb hovered over his number. The weight of his disappointment, his fury, was a physical pressure in the car. I thought of Alec, asleep in the carrier beside me, his face so peaceful. I snapped the phone in half and tossed the pieces out the window. The act of rebellion was terrifying and liberating. We were on our own. The first year was a special kind of hell. Seattle. I chose it because it was far away and always raining, a good place to be miserable and anonymous. Alec was a newborn, a fragile creature entirely dependent on me. The exhaustion was a physical entity, a heavy cloak I could never take off. I found a room in a dilapidated boarding house and a job washing dishes in a greasy spoon, the clatter of plates and the smell of old grease becoming the soundtrack to my fear. I'd work all night, my body screaming in protest, then come home to a crying baby, my arms aching to hold him, my eyes burning with lack of sleep. Every shadow was a threat, every stranger's glance a potential discovery. After 6 months, I had to run again. A man started coming into the diner every night. He never ordered much, just coffee. But he watched me. He had the kind of stillness that screamed law enforcement or something worse. I didn't wait to find out. I packed our single, battered suitcase, took the cash I'd hidden under a loose floorboard, and we were on a bus to Denver. Denver was drier, the sun harsher. We lived in a basement apartment that always smelled of damp earth. Alec was learning to crawl, to pull himself up on wobbly legs. His first word was "Dada." It came out of his mouth one morning as he was looking right at me, and it felt like a gunshot to the heart. I'd held him and sobbed, a storm of grief and love and guilt so profound I thought it would tear me in two. The near disaster happened there. Alec developed a raging fever, his little body limp and burning. I tried everything, cool cloths, medication, but he was only getting worse. I had to make a choice. Risk a hospital or risk his life. It wasn't a choice at all. In the emergency room, I gave them a fake name, paid in cash, and spent 12 hours vibrating with terror, certain that every form I filled out, every question I answered, was a thread in the web that would lead Nikolai Vitali to our door. But we were lucky. It was just an infection. We left with antibiotics and a bill that wiped out half my savings. A week later, I saw the man in the suit. He was across the street from the playground where I was pushing Alec on a swing. He was just standing there, talking on his phone, but he was looking right at us. The same stillness, the same predatory patience. It was time to run again. That's how we ended up here. Portland. Felt different somehow. Softer. The apartment above the bakery was the nicest place we'd ever lived. My landlady, Mrs. Gable, was a widow with flour on her hands and kindness in her eyes. She saw a struggling young Omega with a toddler and offered me work. No questions asked. For the first time in 2 years, I allowed myself to breathe. We developed a routine. I'd wake before dawn, the smell of yeast and sugar already drifting up through the floorboards. I'd help Mrs. Gable with the morning bake, my hands covered in dough, Alex sleeping in a makeshift crib in the corner of the warm kitchen. In the afternoons, we'd go to the park. I started to dream again. Foolish, impossible dreams of a normal life, of signing Alec up for preschool, of making a friend, of a future that wasn't defined by running. The hope was a dangerous, fragile thing, a tiny green shoot pushing its way through concrete. Tonight, the fever came back. Not as bad as in Denver, but enough to bring the old terror roaring back to life. I've been sitting here for hours, watching him, my own past a constant, churning sea beneath the thin ice of our present peace. He stirs on the mattress, a soft whimper escaping his lips as he rolls onto his side. I smooth the hair back from his forehead again. The skin is cooler now, just a little damp. The fever is breaking. Relief washes over me, so potent it makes my knees weak. I stand and stretch, my bones creaking in protest. My gaze falls on the heavy cast-iron skillet sitting on the small electric stove. It's my only real weapon, and its presence is a pathetic, grim comfort. I cross to the window, needing to see the empty street, to reassure myself that the world is as it should be. I pull back the thin, stained curtain, peering through the rain-streaked glass. The streetlights cast long, watery halos on the wet pavement. It's quiet, deceptively peaceful, and that's when I see it. A black car, sleek and impossibly expensive, parked directly across the street under a flickering street lamp. It's a Maybach, a chariot for kings and tyrants. It doesn't belong in this neighborhood of broken-down pickups and rust-eaten sedans. Its windows are tinted, making it a void in the dim light, an abyss that seems to be sucking all the hope and air out of the night. My heart seizes in my chest. It's nothing. A desperate part of my brain screams. A businessman lost on his way to a downtown hotel. A rich kid visiting his dealer. But I know it's a lie. I know it with a certainty that is bone-deep and absolute. The man in Seattle, the man in Denver, they weren't figments of my imagination. They were scouts, and they have led the monster to my door. My breath catches in my throat. I drop the curtain and back away from the window, my movements stiff with a terror so profound it feels like my blood is turning to ice. My eyes dart around the small room, my mind, honed by Ivan's paranoid training, cataloging exits, weapons, defenses. The fire escape is rusted through, a death trap. The door has a simple deadbolt that could be kicked in with one solid blow. We are in a cage of rotting wood and cheap plaster. My gaze lands on Alec, sleeping peacefully, his small chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. The love I feel for him is a roaring inferno, a supernova of terror and devotion. It burns away the paralysis, leaving behind a cold, hard, diamond-sharp resolve. I will not let him be taken. I will not let him be turned into a pawn in a game of ghosts. I will die first. I will kill first. Then it comes. A knock on the door. It's not loud or frantic. It is slow, deliberate, incredibly patient. Each rap is a hammer blow against my frantic heart. It's not the police. It's not Mrs. Gable. It is the sound of my past, my present, and my future colliding. It is the sound of the end of the world. My body moves on instinct. Years of Ivan's training take over. I don't scream. I don't run. I glide silently across the room, my bare feet making no sound on the worn linoleum. I snatch the heavy cast-iron skillet from the stove, the weight of it familiar and grounding in my trembling hand. Another knock, just as calm and certain as the first. It speaks of a power so absolute, it has no need to hurry. I press my back against the wall beside the door, my heart hammering a frantic, suffocating rhythm against my ribs. I can hear the rain drumming on the roof, the groan of the old building, the soft, even sound of my own ragged breathing. In this moment, I am not the vengeful son of a fallen family, ready to meet his enemy. I am not a ghost seeking retribution. I am a parent, a cornered animal, about to fight a god for the only thing in the universe that matters. I tighten my grip on the skillet's handle until my knuckles are white. I raise it high above my head, my muscles screaming with tension, and I wait for the door to splinter. Part 2. The Monster's Cage. The world narrows to the space between heartbeats. Each frantic slam of my pulse against my ribs is a tick of a clock counting down to the end of my life as I know it. The iron of the skillet handle is slick with sweat in my palm, the weapon feeling both absurdly heavy and pathetically inadequate. I hold my breath, listening, waiting for the splintering crash of the door, for the violence I have been raised to expect. Instead, there's a soft click, the sound of a deadbolt being disengaged from the outside. Not with force, but with precision. A key, or something more sophisticated. The knowledge is a fresh wave of ice water in my veins. He didn't need to break the door down. He was letting himself in. The door swings inward with a soft, expensive sigh, a sound completely at odds with the frantic terror screaming through my mind. And then he is there, the monster from the photograph. The stories, the whispers, the grainy image I had studied until it was burned into my memory. None of it did him justice. He fills the doorframe, a monolith of a man clad in a tailored black suit that probably costs more than I've earned in the last 2 years combined. He is taller than I imagined, his shoulders a formidable expanse of muscle beneath the fine wool. His dark hair is cut short, severe, accentuating the sharp, unforgiving angles of his face. His jaw is tight, his lips a thin, unsmiling line. He is handsome in a way that has nothing to do with softness or charm. It is the brutal, objective beauty of a predator, of a perfectly engineered weapon. And his eyes, they are exactly as I knew they would be, exactly like my son's. Chips of obsidian, cold and fathomless. They sweep the room in a single comprehensive glance, taking in the peeling wallpaper, the worn mattress, the single suitcase in the corner, and finally, me. He looks at the skillet in my raised hands, and the corner of his mouth ticks upward in a ghost of a smile. It is the most terrifying expression I have ever seen. It is not amusement. It is the cold, detached acknowledgement of a gnat attempting to challenge a god. Sam, he says, my real name, the name no one has spoken in years except for Ivan. The sound of it from his lips is a violation, a branding. Tells me everything I need to know. He doesn't just know where I am. He knows who I am. My arm trembles with the strain of holding the skillet aloft. Ivan's training screams at me to strike, to fight, to go down in a blaze of defiance. A Kalashnikov does not surrender. His voice rasps in my memory. But another, newer instinct, a primal parental terror, freezes me in place. Behind me, in the other room, Alec, my son. From the corner of his eye, Nikolai's gaze drifts towards the open doorway to the bedroom, drawn by some unseen sound, perhaps a soft shift of blankets. I see the focus in his eyes sharpen, a possessive, laser-like intensity that makes my blood run cold. He takes a single step into the room. The spell breaks. A guttural snarl rips from my throat, an animal sound I don't recognize as my own. Don't, I choke out, taking a half-step forward, placing myself between him and the doorway to my son. Don't you dare. He stops. His obsidian eyes slide back to me, the flicker of a cold fire in their depths. The ghost of a smile is gone, replaced by a mask of utter impassivity. He doesn't look angry. He doesn't look threatened. He looks bored, as if my defiance is a minor, predictable inconvenience. "Put it down," he says, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that seems to vibrate through the floorboards. It's not a request. It's a statement of an inevitable future. "Get out," I say, my voice shaking but laced with every ounce of venom I possess. "Get out of my home." "This is not your home," he replies, his tone flat. "This is a hovel. My son has been living in a hovel." The words are a judgment, a condemnation of my entire existence for the past 2 years. The shame is a hot, physical thing, but the rage is hotter. "He is my son," I hiss. "You are nothing to him." For the first time, a flicker of genuine emotion crosses his face, a flash of something dark and ancient. "He is my blood, my legacy. You are the vessel that carried him. Nothing more." He takes another step, and I tense, ready to swing. "And you have stolen from me. He's not a thing you can own," I shout, the sound raw and desperate. "He is a Vitali," he counters, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "And he will be raised as one." He glances again towards the bedroom, and I see the possessive gleam in his eyes, the absolute certainty of a king surveying his property. That's what breaks me, the sheer, arrogant ownership in that look. The ultimatum I have been dreading my entire life comes, as calm and chilling as a death sentence. "You have 2 choices, Sam," he says, his gaze locking with mine. "You will put down that piece of iron. You will pack a bag for my son. You will walk out of this building with me. You will come to my home, and you will raise him there where he belongs." My breath hitches. "And if I don't?" I ask, the words barely audible. His eyes are utterly devoid of mercy. "Then my men will walk in here, and they will take him. And you will never, ever see him again. I will erase you. You will be a ghost, just as you have been pretending to be for the last 2 years. The choice is yours." The choice is not a choice. It's a crushing, brutal reality. I could fight. I could swing the skillet. He would disarm me in seconds. His men, who are undoubtedly waiting just outside, would swarm the room. They would take Alec. His threat is not a bluff. It's a promise, delivered with the cold certainty of a man who has never known anything but getting what he wants. The strength drains out of me in a single, devastating rush. The cast iron skillet suddenly weighs 1,000 pounds. My arm lowers, the pan clattering to the cheap linoleum floor with a sound that echoes the shattering of my world. The fight is over. Ivan's voice in my head, the voice of the vengeful son, is silent. All that is left is the terrified parent. I have lost. "Good," Nikolai says, the single word a final nail in the coffin of my freedom. "Pack his things. We leave in 5 minutes." The men who enter are as silent and efficient as their master. There are 2 of them, dressed in the same dark, expensive suits, their faces impassive, their movements economical. They don't look at me. It's as if I am a piece of furniture, a necessary but insignificant part of the room's decor. One of them stands by the door, a silent sentinel, while the other moves into the bedroom. I try to follow, a panicked protest dying in my throat, but Nikolai puts a hand on my chest, stopping me. His touch is not violent, but it is as unyielding as a steel bar. "Let him," he says. "He knows what to do." I watch, helpless, as the man efficiently packs Alec's meager belongings into a new, supple leather duffel bag he has brought with him. My son's worn teddy bear, his favorite picture book with the bent corners, the small stack of clothes I'd bought from a second-hand store. My own possessions, the threadbare clothes, the worn-out boots are left untouched, as if they are contaminated. They are erasing me, just as he promised. Only the parts of my life that relate to Alec are being permitted to continue existing. Alec, woken by the quiet intrusion, begins to cry. It's a sleepy, confused sound that tears at my insides. I lunge for the doorway, but Nikolai's grip tightens, holding me fast. "Let me go to him," I plead, the words raw. In a moment, the man emerges from the bedroom, carrying my son. Alec is wrapped in his favorite blanket, his tear-streaked face buried in the man's shoulder, his small fists clutching the fabric of the stranger's suit. He looks so small, so fragile, in the arms of this large, faceless man. The man carrying him is careful, his hold surprisingly gentle, but it doesn't matter. It is a violation. Nikolai finally releases me. The man hands Alec to me, and I clutch my son to my chest, burying my face in his hair, breathing in his familiar, sweet scent. He quiets instantly, his small body molding against mine. He is my shield, my anchor, the only real thing in a world that is dissolving into a nightmare. It's time to go, Nikolai says. The walk out of the building is a walk of shame. Mrs. Gable's door is closed. The comforting smell of her bakery is gone, replaced by the damp chill of the hallway. I wonder if I will ever smell baking bread again without feeling this hollow, aching loss. We move down the stairs and out into the rain-slicked street. The black Maybach is waiting, its engine a low, predatory hum. A door is opened for us. The journey is a long, silent torture. I sit on one side of the cavernous back seat, Alec asleep in my arms, his feverish warmth a small comfort against the chilling reality of my situation. Nikolai sits opposite me, a dark silhouette against the passing city lights. He doesn't speak. He simply watches me, his obsidian gaze analytical, possessive. It feels like he is dissecting me with his eyes, learning my every weakness. The car is a cage of soft leather and tinted glass. The air is thick with his scent, pine and frozen earth, and something metallic underneath, like cold steel and old money. It's an alpha scent of such overwhelming power that it makes the omega in me want to curl up and submit, a primal instinct I fight with every fiber of my being. I focus on Alec, on the weight of him in my arms, and I build a wall of ice inside myself. He can take my body, but he will not have my soul. After an hour of driving through the city, we arrive at a private airfield. I see a sleek, dark jet waiting on the tarmac, its lights cutting through the misty rain. The sheer, breathtaking scale of his wealth is another form of intimidation. I have spent my life in the dirt, fighting for scraps, while he moves through the world like a god, bending it to his will. My carefully constructed plan of revenge seems like a child's fantasy now, a pathetic dream in the face of this absolute, unassailable power. They lead us onto the jet. The interior is like a luxury hotel suite, all cream leather and polished wood. I am directed to a seat, and I buckle myself in, never loosening my grip on Alec. Nikolai sits across from me again, a glass of amber liquid now in his hand. As the jet begins to taxi down the runway, he finally speaks. His fever returned, he says. It's not a question. My blood runs cold. It's just a small one. I say, my voice tight. I know, he says, taking a slow sip of his drink. His temperature was 100.2 this evening. Last month in Denver, it spiked to 103.6. That was a febrile seizure risk. You were lucky. The casual way he drops this information is more terrifying than any overt threat. He hasn't just found me. He has been watching me. For months. Maybe longer. The man in the diner. The man at the playground. They were his. My paranoia wasn't paranoia at all. It was an understatement of the truth. He has been a ghost in my life. An invisible predator tracking his prey, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. You've been following me, I whisper, the accusation sounding weak and pointless. I have been keeping an eye on my son. He corrects, his voice devoid of emotion. To ensure his safety, a task at which you have, on several occasions, failed. The accusation stings, sharp and unfair. I have done nothing but sacrifice for Alec's safety. But what is my desperate, scrambling protection against his network of spies and limitless resources? The jet engines roar, and we are pressed back into our seats as we ascend into the night sky, leaving my small, shattered life far below. I look at the man across from me, the monster who is my son's father, and I understand. I was never a hunter. I was never a threat. I was just a mouse running in a maze of his design, and he has simply grown tired of the game. The estate is not a house. It is a kingdom, We drive for 10 minutes through a dense, private forest before the trees part to reveal the main compound. A massive iron gate, guarded by men with automatic weapons, swings open to admit us. The main house is an imposing stone mansion, a fortress of dark granite and sharp angles that looms against the pre-dawn sky. It is a monument to power and paranoia. It is the mausoleum of stolen power I had always imagined, the heart of the evil I had sworn my life to destroy. The interior is even colder than I expected. The foyer is a cavern of black marble and dark, polished wood, the silence so profound that the sound of our footsteps echoes like gunshots. Priceless paintings of grim-faced ancestors stare down from the walls, their eyes seeming to follow me with silent judgment. Staff members appear as if from nowhere, silent figures in crisp uniforms who take our coats and bags without a word, their eyes fixed on the floor. They move like ghosts trained to be invisible. Nikolai leads me up a grand, sweeping staircase, his hand resting lightly on the small of my back. The touch is impersonal, a gesture of guidance, but it burns like a brand. I am his possession being led through his domain. He stops before a set of heavy, carved double doors at the end of a long hallway. He pushes them open, revealing not a bedroom, but a suite of rooms. It's larger than any apartment I have ever lived in. A massive bedroom with a four-poster bed, a sitting area with a cold, marble fireplace, and an adjoining room, its door slightly ajar. "This will be your space," Nikolai says, his voice echoing slightly in the vast room. "Yours and Alex." I walk slowly into the room, my son still asleep in my arms. The luxury is suffocating. The sheets on the bed are probably silk, the carpets thick and plush under my worn-out boots. But my eyes are drawn to the adjoining room. I push the door open fully. It is a nursery. It's not a new nursery. It has been here for a long time. Everything is in place. A beautiful, hand-carved wooden crib stands in the center of the room. A changing table is stocked with diapers, creams, and wipes. A closet is filled with tiny, expensive-looking clothes for a variety of seasons and sizes. A bookshelf is lined with children's books, both in English and Russian. It has been waiting. He had this room prepared not just for a baby, but for a growing child. For years, the premeditation is a physical blow. He never had any doubt that he would find us. This was always the endgame. I back out of the nursery slowly, a wave of nausea rolling through me. This isn't a guest room. It is a cage. A beautiful, opulent, perfectly designed cage. And the door has just clicked shut behind me. The first 3 days are a war of silence. I am a prisoner, and I act like one. I stay within the confines of the suite, a self-imposed house arrest. I test the boundaries. The main doors to the suite aren't locked, but there are always 2 guards stationed in the hallway outside. They are silent statues who never meet my eyes but whose presence is a constant, suffocating pressure. A silent, polite young woman named Anya brings our meals on a silver tray. The food is exquisite, but I barely touch it. A petty, childish rebellion that seems to go completely unnoticed. My only focus is Alec. He is my shield, my purpose, my entire world in this gilded prison. He at least seems to be thriving. The new environment, the comfortable crib, the endless supply of new toys. He is too young to understand our circumstances, and for that I am grateful. Nikolai leaves me alone, for the most part. He is a ghost in his own house. I hear his heavy footsteps in the hallway late at night, a brief pause outside my door, and then the sound of him moving on. It's a terrifying, nightly ritual that leaves my nerves frayed and raw. On the 4th day, he appears at my door. Alec is on the floor, happily stacking a set of brightly colored blocks. I am on the sofa, watching him, a book lying unread in my lap. "I am taking him for a walk," Nikolai announces from the doorway. He doesn't ask. "No," I say, my voice coming out stronger than I expect. I stand up, placing myself between him and my son. He ignores me, his eyes fixed on Alec. He walks into the room, his presence immediately shrinking the space. He crouches down, a startlingly awkward gesture for such a large, powerful man. Alec looks up at him, his dark eyes wide with curiosity, not fear. "Hello, Alec," Nikolai says, his deep voice softer than I have ever heard it. He reaches out a large, calloused hand and offers Alec a block. My son hesitates for a moment, glancing at me. Then he giggles and takes the block, attempting to place it on top of his wobbly tower. I watch, my heart a painful, knotted thing in my chest. This is the scene I have dreaded, the moment my son begins to connect with his father, the monster. I am filled with a toxic, churning mix of emotions. White-hot fury that this man thinks he has the right to be here, a sharp, possessive jealousy at the easy way Alec accepts him, and underneath it all a painful, undeniable pang of seeing my son with his other parent. "He needs fresh air," Nikolai says, his gaze still on Alec. "And he needs to know his home." "This isn't his home," I retort, my voice tight. Nikolai finally looks up at me, his eyes as cold and hard as stone. "It is. And the sooner you accept that, the easier this will be for everyone. For him." He gestures to Alec. It's emotional blackmail, pure and simple. He scoops Alec up into his arms. My son, instead of crying, lets out a squeal of delight, his little hands grabbing onto the lapels of Nikolai's expensive suit. The sight is a physical blow. I have been everything to Alec for 2 years, and in a single moment, this stranger has charmed him. I have no choice but to follow them, a silent, fuming shadow, as Nikolai carries my son through the halls of his cold, cavernous home and out into the sprawling gardens. I feel like a ghost haunting the edges of my own life. This becomes our new, unspoken routine. Every day, Nikolai appears and spends time with Alec. He is clumsy at it, a man utterly unaccustomed to the world of children. He brings Alec expensive, age-inappropriate gifts, a detailed model ship, a first-edition book of Russian fairy tales. But he is patient. He learns. I watch from a distance as he teaches Alec how to skip stones across a large ornamental pond, his deep voice explaining the physics of it with a grave seriousness that is almost comical. Then the wooden animals start appearing. The first one is a wolf, small and perfectly carved from a single piece of dark wood, its head tilted in a silent howl. I find it on the floor outside my suite one morning. I assume it was left by a staff member. But a few days later, a bear appears in the same spot, its tiny claws meticulously detailed. Then a hawk, its wings outstretched. I know, with a sudden, gut-wrenching certainty, that they are from him. There is a file in the sitting room, a tool for whittling wood, lying on his desk. I've seen it. He is carving them at night, in the silence of his study, and leaving them as secret, silent offerings. The gesture is so at odds with the soulless monster I have constructed in my mind that it destabilizes me. A monster does not secretly carve toys for a child. A monster does not spend hours trying to master the art of skipping stones. Before I can even process what is happening, Nikolai is there. He appears as if from nowhere, moving with a speed and grace that is terrifying in a man his size. He is not wearing his suit jacket, his white shirt stark against the gray sky, and he is holding a handgun. His eyes are not the cold, impassive obsidian I am used to. They are blazing with a violent, primal fire. He is not the awkward father or the silent captor. He is the Bratva leader. He is the monster. But the fury in his eyes is not directed at me. It is directed outward at the unseen threat. He reaches us in 3 long strides, his gaze sweeping over me and Alec, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt?" he barks, his voice a weapon. I shake my head, unable to speak. He doesn't waste another second. He grabs my arm, his grip like iron, and hauls me to my feet. "Get inside. Now," he commands. He pushes me towards the house, his body a shield between us and the direction of the explosion. His scent floods the air, thick and potent, no longer just pine and steel, but something wilder, more dangerous. It is the scent of pure, undiluted protection, and my traitorous Omega instincts respond to it, a feeling of profound, unwilling safety washing over me. The fact that the source of this safety is my greatest fear is a dizzying, sickening paradox. He shoves us through a side door and into the arms of 2 guards, rattling off a stream of harsh Russian commands. They escort us back to the suite, their faces grim. The alarm is still blaring, a soundtrack to my frantic, terrified thoughts. They leave us in the suite, locking the door from the outside. The sound of the bolt sliding home is a final, definitive declaration of my status. I am a precious asset, to be protected and contained. I pace the room, Alec clinging to me like a limpet, his face buried in my neck. Hours pass. The alarm finally stops, but the house remains in a state of tense, silent lockdown. Anya brings dinner, her face pale, her hands trembling slightly. She doesn't say what happened, and I don't ask. It is late, well past midnight, when Nikolai finally returns. He looks exhausted. There is a smudge of soot on his cheek and a dark stain on the cuff of his white shirt that I pray is not blood. He moves to the small bar in the sitting room and pours himself a generous amount of whiskey, downing it in one go. It was a car bomb, he says, his back to me. A message from the Chechen faction. They were testing our defenses. I say nothing, just hold Alec tighter. They failed, he adds, his voice flat. He turns around, his eyes finding mine in the dim light. You are safe here, both of you. I will not let anyone harm you. He says it like a vow, a sacred oath sworn in the aftermath of violence. And I believe him. That is the most terrifying part of all. I believe him. A few nights later, the fever returns. Comes on suddenly, as they always do. One moment, Alec is sleeping peacefully. The next, he is thrashing, his skin burning, his cries weak and pained. My panic is immediate and overwhelming. I don't trust the silent, grim-faced man Nikolai had introduced as the family doctor. Ivan's voice whispers in my ear, a paranoid ghost warning me not to trust any of them. I try to manage it myself, just as I did in Denver. I fill the large bathtub with lukewarm water, trying to sponge him down, but he just cries harder. His temperature is climbing, and I feel the familiar, helpless terror creeping in. I don't know how he knows. Perhaps he heard the crying. Perhaps he has cameras in the suite. The thought is a fresh violation, but I am too panicked to care. The door to the suite opens, and Nikolai is standing there, dressed in a simple t-shirt and dark pants, his feet bare. What is it? He asks, his voice rough with sleep. He has a fever. I say, my voice trembling. It's high. He is across the room in an instant, his large hand gently pressing against Alec's forehead. He curses softly in Russian. Why did you not call for Dr. Andre? I don't trust him. I admit, the words a raw whisper. I expect anger and order. Instead, his expression softens, just for a fraction of a second. He looks at me, at the desperation on my face, and something seems to shift within him. All right, he says. We will do this your way first. For the rest of the night, we are a team. Not a captor and a captive. Not a monster and his prey. Just two terrified parents, fighting a common enemy. He is surprisingly capable, his movements calm and efficient. He brings cool cloths, his large, calloused hands surprisingly gentle as he sponges Alec's small, hot body. He sends a guard for children's fever reducer and measures it out with a steady hand. We sit in the dim light of the nursery, one on either side of the crib, watching our son's chest rise and fall. The silence between us is different now. It is not a battlefield. It is a shared space of anxiety and hope. He gets them from me, Nikolai says quietly, his voice a low rumble in the darkness. The fevers. I had them often as a child. The admission of vulnerability is so unexpected. It startles me. I look at him, at his powerful silhouette in the shadows, and for the first time, I see not just the Bratva leader, but the man. A man who was once a small boy, sick and feverish in the dark. I'm sorry, I find myself saying, though I don't know for what. For his childhood? For our situation? For the war that rages between our names? He just nods, his eyes never leaving our son. Towards dawn, the fever finally breaks. Alec's breathing evens out. His skin cools. The relief is so profound it feels like I can finally breathe again myself. I am boneless with exhaustion. You should sleep, Nikolai says, his voice soft. I'll stay. I will watch him, he insists. He is my son too. I will keep him safe. Go. I will wake you if he stirs. I hesitate, my protective instincts warring with my exhaustion. But looking at him, at the unwavering focus in his eyes as he watches our son, I find myself doing the unthinkable. I trust him. I retreat to the bedroom, collapsing onto the massive bed, and fall into a deep, dreamless sleep. When I wake hours later, the sun is streaming through the windows. I rush into the nursery. Nikolai is gone. In his place, on the small table beside the crib, sits a newly carved wooden animal. It's a lion, its face fierce and protective, its body curled around a tiny, sleeping cub. I pick it up, the wood smooth and warm in my hand. My carefully constructed wall of hatred has not just been cracked. It has been breached. The monster is looking more and more like a man, and I am trapped here, in his cage, my heart a chaotic, mutinous traitor in my chest. Part 3. The Unmasking. A fragile peace settled over the estate in the weeks following Alek's fever. It was an unnerving quiet, a stillness that felt less like tranquility and more like the held breath before a storm. The house was still a fortress, the guards still silent sentinels at their posts. But the walls of my cage began to feel less solid, more permeable. I started to venture out of the suite, not with the furtive, boundary-testing energy of a prisoner, but with the tentative steps of a ghost learning to inhabit a house. I discovered the library, a 2-story cathedral of books that smelled of old paper, leather, and cedar. I'd spend hours there while Alek napped, losing myself in stories that weren't my own. The heavy silence a comforting blanket. I found the greenhouses, a humid, vibrant world of exotic flowers and tropical plants, a riot of life that stood in stark contrast to the cold, severe architecture of the main house. I took Alek there often, watching his small face light up with wonder at the brightly colored orchids and the towering, alien-looking ferns. The change in Nikolai was subtle but profound. The silence between us was no longer a battlefield, but a space of quiet observation. He no longer treated me as a contemptible object he had acquired, but as a complex, volatile presence in his home. Our tense, silent dinners became less frequent, replaced by a new, unspoken routine. He would find us. In the library, he'd appear with a rare first edition of a classic, placing it on the table beside me without a word. In the greenhouse, he would point out a particularly rare bloom to Alek, explaining its origins in a low, serious voice. He was a planet, pulling us slowly, inexorably, into his orbit. My hatred, which had been the sun of my universe for so long, was being eclipsed. It was terrifying. The lines were so blurred now, I could no longer tell where the monster ended and the man began. Ivan's voice, the constant, gravelly whisper of vengeance in my head, was growing faint, drowned out by the sound of my son's laughter. This afternoon, the sun has made a rare appearance, a pale, golden disk in the vast Oregon sky. We are in the gardens, near the ornamental pond where Nikolai first taught Alek to skip stones. My son, now more confident, is launching pebbles into the water with joyous abandon. I'm sitting on a cold stone bench, a book open but unread on my lap, watching him. A genuine, unguarded smile stretches my lips. It's a foreign feeling, this simple, uncomplicated happiness. He has a good arm. Nikolai's voice, deep and close, startles me. I hadn't heard him approach. He is standing behind the bench, dressed not in his usual severe suit, but in dark trousers and a soft, gray cashmere sweater that softens the brutal lines of his frame. He looks less like a Bratva leader and more like a country gentleman. It's a disarming illusion. He comes around the bench and sits, leaving a respectful distance between us, but close enough that I can feel the heat radiating from his body. We sit in silence for a long time watching our son. It's not awkward. It's almost domestic. A strange, fragile tableau. The two warring houses, the monster and the ghost, watching their shared legacy play in the sun. Alek, tiring of the stones, comes running towards us, his cheeks flushed, his dark eyes sparkling. He stumbles the last few feet and tumbles into Nikolai's lap. "Papa," he says, the word still a casual dagger in my heart. He doesn't use it for me. He has other names for me, Mama, Papachka, but the formal, solid title of Papa is reserved for Nikolai. Nikolai's reaction is instantaneous. His arms come around Alec, his large hands spreading protectively over our son's small back. A look of such profound, unguarded tenderness crosses his face that it steals the breath from my lungs. It is the look of a man who has been given the one thing he thought he could never have. In that moment, watching him hold our laughing child, my last defenses crumble. Who was the monster? The man before me, whose fierce, protective love for our son was as plain as the sun in the sky? Or the man who had raised me in the shadows, who had demanded I sacrifice this child's soul for the sake of long-dead ghosts? For the first time, I allow myself to question everything. To wonder if Ivan's truth was just another cage, smaller and colder than this one, but a cage all the same. I am on the verge of letting go, of surrendering to this strange, impossible peace. And that is when it happens. Alec, giggling, reaches up and grabs the thin silver chain I always wear hidden beneath my shirt. It's the one thing I have left of my mother, the one piece of my past I could never bear to part with. The chain snaps under his enthusiastic tug. The locket, a small oval piece of tarnished silver, falls onto the dark wool of Nikolai's sweater. Time stops. The locket lies there, face up. The engraving is worn with age, but unmistakable in the clear afternoon light. A proud, stylized eagle, its wings spread wide, a lightning bolt clutched in its talons. The Kalashnikov crest. The change in Nikolai is instantaneous and terrifying. One moment, he is a father, his face softened by love. The next, the warmth vanishes as if it were a mask torn away. The air around him drops 10 degrees. His body goes rigid, the muscles in his arms cording as he holds Alec. His eyes, when they lift to meet mine, are no longer the fathomless, observant pools I have grown accustomed to. They are black holes, devoid of light, filled with a chilling, profound sense of betrayal. He knows. My blood turns to ice. My throat closes. The beautiful, fragile piece of the last few minutes shatters into a million razor-sharp pieces. I am back in the dingy apartment in Portland, the skillet in my hand, the monster at my door. No, this is worse. This is so much worse. That was a monster I thought I knew. This is a man whose tentative trust one have just catastrophically broken. Alec, Nikolai says, his voice a low, controlled rumble that holds a universe of menace. Go to the guards. By the fountain. He doesn't look at our son, his gaze is locked on me, pinning me to the bench. Alec, sensing the sudden, violent shift in the atmosphere, whimpers. But Papa. Now, Nikolai commands. The word is a crack of a whip. Alec scrambles off his lap and runs, his small form a beacon of innocence fleeing a storm. Nikolai slowly reaches down and picks up the locket, his fingers closing around it. He stands, a towering, menacing silhouette against the pale sun. He takes a step towards me, and I instinctively flinch back, my hands coming up in a useless gesture of defense. "What is this?" he asks, his voice dangerously quiet. I can't speak. The lie I have lived for my entire life is a thick, choking thing in my throat. He takes another step, looming over me. He opens his hand. The Kalashnikov crest seems to mock me from his palm. "I will ask you one more time. What is this?" "It was my mother's," I whisper, the words barely audible. "Your mother was a waitress from Ohio who died in a car crash," he says, his voice flat and cold. "That is what the file says. The file that my people spent a year compiling on Michael Stone. He knows. He knows it's all a lie." "Who are you?" he demands, his voice rising, the carefully controlled mask finally cracking to reveal the raging inferno beneath. "Who are you?" The truth spills out of me then, a torrent of confession born of sheer terror. "My name is Sam," I choke out, tears blurring my vision. "Sam Kalashnikov." The name hangs in the air between us, An obscenity, a declaration of war. I see the final pieces click into place behind his eyes. The realization, the comprehension, the sheer, staggering weight of my deception. He doesn't just look angry. He looks shattered, as if I have driven a shard of glass into his heart. The surrogacy, he says, his voice a hoarse whisper. It was all a lie. Yes. I sob, the confession tearing me apart. It was a plan. For revenge. I tell him everything. I tell him about Ivan, about being raised in the shadows, about the hatred that was fed to me like mother's milk. I tell him about the original plan, to steal the heir and raise him as a weapon. I try to tell him how it all changed, how the moment I held Alec, the plan turned to ash. But he's my son. I cry, my voice breaking. Not a weapon, Nikolai, never. I ran to protect him. From you, yes, but from Ivan, too. From all of it. He is not listening. He is looking at me as if I am a complete stranger, a venomous snake he has foolishly allowed into his home. He sees the past few months, the shared moments, the tentative truce, the shared vigil over our sick child, and he sees it all as a monstrous, calculated act. He thinks I have been playing him, a spy in his most private sanctum. You stood in my house, he says, his voice shaking with a rage so profound it seems to suck the air from my lungs. You ate at my table. You let my son call you mother. The word is a curse on his lips. And all this time you were a ghost, a Kalashnikov ghost, waiting to put a knife in my back. No, I protest, scrambling to my feet. It's not like that anymore. I chose Alec. I can't say it. I chose this. You chose nothing, he snarls, taking a step back as if my touch would contaminate him. You lied. Every breath you have taken in this house has been a lie. He turns his back on me, a gesture of absolute dismissal. He raises a hand, and 2 guards appear at his side as if summoned from the earth. Take him, Nikolai commands, his voice like the chipping of ice. Lock him in the West Wing study, and bring me my son. My world ends. No, I scream, lunging for him. Nikolai, please, don't take him from me. Please, you can't. The guards grab my arms, their grips like iron vices. I struggle, kicking and screaming Alec's name, my dignity shredding, my heart tearing in two. This is it. This is the nightmare he threatened me with in that grimy Portland apartment. He is erasing me. He is taking my son. Nikolai doesn't look back. He just walks away, a rigid, unforgiving figure, leaving me to my despair. They drag me, sobbing and pleading, back towards the cold stone house, my worst fears realized. The study is a cage of dark wood and the smell of old secrets. They shove me inside and lock the door. I collapse onto the floor, a heap of shattered hopes, my body racked with sobs. I have lost him, my son, my Malish. The pain is a physical entity, a living thing with claws and teeth, tearing me apart from the inside. Hours pass. The sun sets, casting long, menacing shadows across the room. I am hollowed out, empty, nothing but a shell of grief. I have failed everyone. I failed my family's memory by abandoning my revenge. I failed Alec by getting caught. I failed myself by allowing a flicker of hope into the darkness. Suddenly, a sound cuts through the thick silence of the house. An alarm. Not the fire alarm, but a high-pitched, piercing shriek I recognize from the car bomb attack. It's the estate's primary security alarm. A second later, a low, guttural boom shakes the very foundations of the house, rattling the windows in their frames. Gunfire erupts outside, a frantic, chaotic popping that sounds terrifyingly close. The estate is under attack. My first thought is Alec. Where is he? Is he safe? The terror for my son is so powerful it eclipses my own despair. I scramble to my feet, pounding on the heavy wooden door. Alec! I scream, my voice raw. Let me out. Where is my son? There is no answer, only the sounds of chaos outside. Shouting in Russian. The shattering of glass. More gunfire, closer this time. Amidst the chaos, The lock on the study door clicked open. I threw myself back against the far wall as the door opened a mere inch. A hand in a black tactical glove, one I didn't recognize as belonging to Nikolai's usual security detail, slid a thin phone across the floor. Before I could even react, the door was pulled shut, the lock tumbling back into place. It wasn't a rescue. It was a delivery. Wafer-thin, black, and brand new. As I stared at it, the screen lit up with a single text message from an unknown number. Answer. A second later, it began to ring. The jaunty, tinny sound utterly obscene amidst the violence. My heart hammered in my chest. This wasn't a forgotten link to my past. This was a direct line to the man pulling the strings of the present. With a sense of profound dread, I crept forward and answered it. Sam, Ivan's voice said, as calm and gravelly as if he were commenting on the weather. I trust you are enjoying the fireworks. Ivan, I whisper, my mind reeling. What is happening? Who is attacking? A dry, mirthless chuckle comes through the speaker. An old business associate of your father's. The Chechens. They were always more ambitious than the Vitalis. They simply needed an opportunity. A distraction. The blood drains from my face. A distraction? You, my boy, he says, and the casual cruelty in his voice is a physical blow. You were the perfect distraction. So much drama. The runaway surrogate, the hidden heir. It drew all of Nikolai's focus inward, made him look for threats inside his own heart instead of outside his walls. He grew soft, sentimental. My mind struggles to process his words. The plan, I stammer. Revenge, the Kalashnikov legacy, was a pretty story to motivate a sentimental boy. Ivan says, his voice turning cold. I trained you, Sam. I saw your heart. You were never going to be a weapon. You feel too much. I knew you would bond with the child. I knew you would run. I knew Nikolai would hunt you. I orchestrated every step. The world tilts on its axis. My entire life, my purpose, my grief, it was all a lie. A manipulation. Why? I choke out, the single word a testament to my shattered reality. Because your family died for the same reason you were about to. He snarls. The mask of the calm guardian finally dropping to reveal the true monster beneath. They were weak. Your father with his talk of honor. Your mother with her soft heart. Sentiment is a disease, Sam. It rots the foundation of power. The Vitalis have the same sickness. I am simply cutting it out. I am backing a winner. The finality in his voice is absolute. He was never my savior. He was my jailer, and his cage was made of lies. He didn't care about our family's honor. He just wanted power. You used me. I whisper, the realization a cold, dead weight in my stomach. You used Alec. A means to an end, he says dismissively. Goodbye, Sam. It is a shame. You almost had a heart strong enough for this world. The line goes dead. I stare at the phone, my mind a maelstrom of shock and betrayal. My entire identity has been a fabrication. I am not the vengeful son. I am a pawn, a fool. And the man I thought was my protector is the true author of my destruction. The door to the study is suddenly unlocked and thrown open. Two of Nikolai's guards, their faces grim, grab my arms. Come, now, to the panic room. They drag me through the chaotic hallways. The sounds of battle are everywhere. Staff members are screaming. I see bodies on the marble floor. The attackers are inside the house. They shove me through a heavy steel door, hidden behind a bookcase in the main library. Nikolai is already inside, a pistol in one hand, a radio in the other. Alec is huddled in the corner, sobbing in the arms of the young housemaid, Anya. Nikolai turns as I'm thrown inside, his face a mask of cold fury, his eyes promising a painful death. He looks at me, then at the burner phone still clutched in my hand. He must have overheard the end of the call on the guards' radios. The heavy steel door slams shut, sealing us in a world of brushed metal and recycled air. The sounds of the battle outside are muffled now, a dull, percussive rhythm of our impending doom. We are trapped. Me, my son, and the man who moments ago was about to cast me into the abyss. His personal betrayal at my hands is suddenly dwarfed by a much larger, more strategic one that threatens to consume us all. The dynamic in the room has been reset. We are not captor and captive. We are not the betrayed and the betrayer. We are two parents, with one terrified child, facing a common enemy who wants us all dead. Nikolai stares at me, his obsidian eyes unreadable. I see him processing the information, the new, horrifying reality. He looks at me not as a Kalashnikov spy but as something else. A pawn. A victim in a much longer, crueler game. Just like him. His enemy is not me. It is the ghost who raised me. He crosses the small room in 2 strides, his presence overwhelming. I flinch, expecting a blow. Instead, he crouches down in front of me, his gaze intense. "That man," he says, his voice a low, urgent growl. "Ivan. He trained you. He taught you how my family thinks. He taught you how your family thinks. Their strategies. Their tactics." I nod, my throat too tight to speak. "The attack patterns," Nikolai continues, his eyes boring into mine. "The way they are moving through the house. It is not random. It is disciplined. Is it his plan? Is he using Kalashnikov strategies?" I think back, my mind racing, pushing past the pain of the betrayal. I think of the long, grueling lessons with Ivan, the dog-eared books on military history, the endless drills. The Vitalis build fortresses. Ivan used to say, "They think in straight lines, in brute force. Kalashnikov thinks like water. We find the cracks. We flow where they least expect it." I look at the security monitors that line one wall of the panic room, showing a dozen different camera feeds of the house. I see the attackers bypassing the main, heavily defended corridors, instead moving through the service tunnels, the ventilation systems, flowing where they are least expected. "Yes," I whisper, my voice hoarse. "It's him. He's using our ways." Nikolai's jaw tightens. He looks from the monitors to me, and in his eyes, I see a flicker of something I never expected to see again. A desperate, unwilling glimmer of trust. He has the brawn, the men, the guns. But I have the knowledge. I am the only one who can get inside our enemy's head. He stands, turning to his head of security. "Give him a headset," he commands. The guard hesitates, looking at me with undisguised hatred. "Sir, he is. He is the only one who knows how the ghost thinks." Nikolai cuts him off, his voice iron. "Do it." The guard reluctantly hands me a headset. I put it on, my hands trembling. The sounds of the battle, of his men fighting and dying, fill my ears. Nikolai turns back to me. The space between us is charged. A new, terrifying alliance being forged in the heart of the fire. My choice is clear. I can cling to the wreckage of my past, to the identities that have been stolen from me or that I have been forced to wear, and let us all die. Or I can choose my son. I look over at Alec, who is watching me, his tear-filled eyes wide with fear. He is my only truth, my only allegiance. I take a deep breath, push the microphone into place, and meet Nikolai's gaze. "Tell me what you see," I say, my voice steady for the first time in what feels like a lifetime. "I will tell you where he is going next." Epilogue. 7 years later. The scent of roses hangs heavy in the late afternoon air. A sweet, warm perfume that I once would have associated with suffocation and beautiful prisons. Now it just smells like home. I lean my head back against Nikolai's shoulder, his arm a familiar, solid weight around my waist. The crisp linen of his shirt is soft against my cheek, and his scent, pine and frozen earth, once a suffocating miasma of power and threat, is now the anchor of my world, the scent of safety. In the center of the manicured lawn, our son is laughing. Alec is 9 years old, a whirlwind of long limbs and boundless energy, his dark hair flopping into his eyes as he squints in concentration. He has Nikolai's fierce focus, a seriousness that settles over his features as he draws the string of a small, expertly crafted recurve bow. But he has my smile, a quick, brilliant flash that appears when he is proud of himself. He lets the arrow fly, a clean, sharp thwip, and it thuds satisfyingly into the center of the target we'd set up earlier. He turns to us, his obsidian eyes, his father's eyes, alight with a triumph that is entirely his own. "Did you see, Papa? Right in the middle. I saw a malish." I call back, my voice thick with a pride that still feels new and overwhelming, even after all this time. "A true Kalashnikov shot." Nikolai chuckles, a low, warm rumble that vibrates through my back. With a Vitali's steady hand, he murmurs, his lips brushing against the sensitive skin of my scent gland in a possessive, loving gesture that still sends a shiver through me. It's a claim, but not one of ownership. It's a statement of fact, of belonging. The ghosts are quiet now. The ghosts of my slaughtered family, the ones Ivan used to fuel my hatred, have found their peace. They no longer demand vengeance. They are content, I think, to see their line continue not in blood and war, but in the sound of a child's laughter echoing through a garden. And Ivan, he is a ghost of a different sort. A memory of betrayal. A cautionary tale of a man so consumed by the game of power that he forgot what it was all for. After the siege, after we had fought side by side, he was found. He did not get the end he deserved. There is no justice in this world for men like him, but he is gone. A closed chapter in a book I no longer read. The simmering hate that fueled me for 2 decades has been replaced by this. A fierce, protective love for the family I chose, not the one I was born to avenge. We never hide the past from Alec. He knows who he is. He knows the story of the proud Kalashnikovs, a family of warriors. He knows he is a Vitali, heir to an empire built on shadows and steel. He understands, on a level that still astounds me, that these are just stories. They are not his destiny. He is not a weapon or a legacy. He is just a boy who loves dogs and drawing and the satisfying thud of an arrow hitting its mark. He is safe. He is loved. Nikolai's hand tightens on my waist, pulling me closer until there is no space left between us. He follows my gaze to our son, and I see the same raw, unguarded emotion mirrored in his eyes that I feel in my own heart. The world outside these walls is still dangerous. His business, our business, I've learned to say, is still steeped in shadow and blood. It is not a perfect life. It is not a simple one, but it is ours. I never thought. I start, my voice a whisper, trailing off into the fragrant air. I don't even know how to finish the sentence. I never thought I could be happy. I never thought I could love the monster from my nightmares. I never thought I'd feel safe in the heart of the inferno. He seems to understand anyway. He always does. He turns my face toward him, his thumb brushing gently, rough with calluses, across my cheekbone. The cold, ruthless Bratva leader is a ghost, too, seen only by our enemies. The man before me is the one who held my hand through a bout of stomach flu, who learned I hated cilantro, who still carves small wooden animals for our son, and who looked at me across a blood-spattered panic room and chose to trust me. "I know," he says, his voice rough with an emotion he rarely shows to anyone else. "Me neither." He leans in and kisses me. It's not a kiss of ownership or of victory. Not anymore. It is a kiss of quiet certainty, of promises kept and a future built from the ashes of 2 broken, warring pasts. As Alec's shout of triumph at hitting another bullseye rings out across the garden, I close my eyes and kiss him back, finally, completely at peace. The vengeful son is gone. That boy died in the fire and smoke of the siege, his purpose revealed as a lie. In his place is a husband, a father, and a man who, against all odds, has found his way home. Hope you enjoyed the story. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You can also become a channel member for exclusive BL stories every Friday and early access to upcoming content. See you in the next one.